Hi everyone. So in this video, I'm going to go over how to find the intersections of conic sections, namely parabola and hyperbola and lines. Okay, so you see here we have a parabola and a line. So the parabola is expressed by this equation. The line is expressed by this equation. So we want to find these 2 points of intersection. Okay, so I know we didn't really go over how to sketch a parabola too much, but let's say this graph was not given to you. Then remember you have the vertex. So the vertex is HK, so that's 2, 4. Okay, so you would at least sketch the vertex 2, 4 and the opening. So if y is squared, it's left or right. With a negative, we have opening to the left. Okay, but for this example, I gave you the graph. So I'll just go over what we're going to be using. We have to solve a system. We have to solve a system. And in this topic, we're actually going to be using substitution. Okay, so we did a lot of solving systems by elimination when we were studying functions. Now we have to solve with substitution. So they're fairly long problems. So I'll start on this page. So we have to substitute the value of y into the equation up here. Okay, so that's the first step that I will do. So instead of y, I have negative 2x minus 5 minus 4 squared. Okay, so I guess I'll simplify this side because there's not much else I can do here. I'll simplify negative 2x minus 9 squared. So be careful with the square. The reason I chose to go over this topic in conic sections, so there was a lot of topics I could have chosen from, is because it really allows you to practice solving quadratic equations. Okay, and it's a really good practice. We're going to practice some algebra here. Just be careful when you simplify. So negative 2 times negative 2 is 4x squared. We have 18, positive 18, and positive 18. That's 36. And we have negative 9 times negative 9, and that's 81. So what you'll see, what will come up, quadratic equation. The only way to solve a quadratic equation is to make it equal to 0. So let's see what happens here. I'll bring over the negative 20, becomes plus 40. Plus 20. 40 is next. Plus 20, so the negative became positive, and plus 40 became minus 40. So we'll simplify a little bit more. 36 plus 20 is plus 56. Positive 81 minus 40, positive 41. So I'll just rewrite it, just out of habit. This is our quadratic equation that we can solve. Okay, so be ready to have some large numbers. These numbers are not too bad. You can always check if the coefficients have something in common. So let's say this was 44, I would divide everything by 4. Okay, you're allowed to do that. If you don't want to bother, that's fine. We are going to use the quadratic formula to solve for x. Okay, so let's see here. Negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so let me continue. Right, so we have all of this, negative 56. So all of this in the calculator. I did this earlier just so I could go a little bit faster in the video. Is this here divided by 2 times 4. And this should give you negative 56 plus or minus. So don't expect whole numbers in these problems, divided by 8. Okay, and our two values for x are negative 0.78 and negative 13.2. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to the drawing and see if that makes sense. Negative 0.78. So a negative, here are our points here, right? The points of intersection that we're trying to find, by the way, are this one and this one. So negative 0.78, that makes sense. And then negative 13.2. Okay, so that makes sense. So once you find your values for x, you need to find your values for y. So you need to find the corresponding value for each, the corresponding y value for each value of x. So if we work this out, this gives us negative 3.44. So our first point, I'm going to pair them off right away so I don't get mixed up. That's our first point. And our second point, no, I didn't find it yet. Second point, negative 2 times negative 13.2 minus 5. Did these calculations earlier, 21.4. Okay, you can always pause and double check. 21.4. So these are the 2 points of intersection. Now, there we go. Negative 13.2, 21.4, negative 0.78, and 3.44. So what I actually did before I started the video is I entered each equation into Desmos, and then I clicked on the points, so you actually get the solutions. And the reason I did this is obviously to check my work. And believe it or not, I do 4 examples in this video. I actually made a mistake in every single one. So had I not had my solutions, I would have assumed they were right. Mistakes, it's silly mistakes, right? Negative times a negative. It's just mistakes in the algebra. So what I suggest you do is when you do the Math Hub Services videos is open your Desmos, graph the 2 conic sections, or the conic section and the line. You can see the answers, and then of course you should do the work to practice the algebra. Okay, so it's obviously not just about the answers, and that's it. So that's example 1. So they're going to get a little bit harder in each one. So in this example, again, parabola and a line, but we see that we only have one solution. So let's see how that happens. Same idea. We're going to substitute. Okay, we're going to actually, no, I'll do it on the next page. I have more room. We are going to substitute the value of y into the parabola. Okay, so we have 24 negative 6 plus 3 is equal to x minus 4 squared. So this is still parabola and a line. So if we simplify this, negative 6x minus 7, remember that to square that, so binomial times a binomial is a trinomial. Okay, so those are all little places where you can make mistakes. We distribute. We have our quadratic equation. We will make this equal to 0. Okay, plus 144x plus 168. We combine like terms. Negative 8 plus 144, 136. 16 plus 68, 184. Okay. So we will minus 4ac all over 2a. Plug in our values. 136 squared minus 4ac divided by 2. Okay, so I'll show what I got for the radical. No, I actually didn't write that down. Okay. So just give me a second. I guess I can do it now. So we have 136 squared minus 4 times 1 times 184. This is the square root of 17760. Okay, so the two values for x. Okay, the two values for x. 133.3. So we have 136 plus or minus 133.3 divided by 2. And if you work this out, okay, so I won't do this calculation, but if you add and divide by 2, you should get negative 1.37 and negative 134. And now I just want to make sure. Yeah, negative 1.37 and 134.6. Okay, negative 134. So now we have two values of x. So close to negative 1 and negative 134. That's why I had to provide the drawing. If you look here, clearly this is close to 0. So we have to reject the value that does not make sense for our diagram. Okay, so that's why I wanted to show you this example. And then we will just plug it into the function. And the value for y is this. And the solution is negative 1.37, negative 1.78. Okay, and again, I checked my answer earlier. Negative 1.37, negative 1.8. Okay, so I'll just go back for a second. Again, I'll review. The reason I rejected the answer is because if in the sketch, okay, boy. Well, I guess I could just go here to the sketch. We have our sketch here. We see the negative 184 is somewhere over here. So that doesn't make sense. Okay, so the value that makes sense in our drawing is negative 1.37. Okay, so that was parabola and line. Now we will do two examples of hyperbola and line. I don't do ellipse because it's not in the Math Help Services examples in terms of what will come up on your assignment, but it's very similar. If you can do hyperbola, you can do ellipse. Okay, so again, we have the drawing. We can clearly see that we expect two solutions, and we can also predict that the x's must be positive and the y's must be positive. Okay, so this will be a little bit more complicated only because the equation of the hyperbola is a little bit more complicated. Again, what is the same is substitution. So we will substitute this into y. X squared over 16 minus 4x minus 18 minus 6 squared divided by 5 is equal to 1. Okay, so we're just going to simplify. We have x squared over 16, 4x minus 24 over 5 is equal to 1. Remember, that's squared. So here, I'll do it here. So because it's squared, another way of, no, actually, let me not do it there. I'll do it the long way. Another way of squared is to expand. Okay, so very common mistake. Very common mistake. And we would have, okay, so 4 times 4 times 4, 16. So earlier when I was looking for my mistake, I found it here. I did 4 times 4 is 8. Okay, so a lot of opportunities to make mistakes. You're subtracting, so remember to do that. Negative 24 times 4 is negative 96 twice. So that's negative 192, and 24 squared is 576. Okay, so there's an extra step here. To remove the fraction, because we have a quadratic equation, the fraction is complicating it. We will multiply every term by the multiple of the denominators. Okay, and I'll show you why. 16 times 5 is 80. So we're going to multiply this by 80, this by 80, and a very common mistake, we tend to forget this by 80. And this allows us to get rid of the fraction. So 80 divided by 6 is 5. Okay, and there goes that denominator. 80 divided by 5, so obviously you'll see the pattern. You'll see the pattern. And the pattern is that they switch. No, I forgot there was also a 16 there. Okay, so I forgot the 16 there. Minus 192x plus 576. And 80 times 1 is 80. So a lot of students over the years, I remember I'd always say, okay, miss, so it's like this times 5 and this times 16. Yes, but the problem is if you do it that way, you forget about the 1. So that's what shows up, right? Visually, that's what you see. You see that a 5 gets multiplied with this first term and the 16 gets multiplied with the second term, but don't forget to multiply by the 1. Okay, I would say the most common mistake. Now we have to distribute. Okay, so yes, the numbers get a little bit larger. 1 year, one of the questions was about orbiting orbits in space, and the numbers were very large, in the millions. Okay, but I remember telling the students, if you can do quadratic equation with tens, you can do it with millions. Okay, so we combine like terms. And we have our quadratic equation. Okay, you can try to find a common factor if you wanted to simplify it. If not, we can go straight into the quadratic equation. You can also get rid of the negative here if you wanted to, but you don't have to. Okay, so we have the negative of 372 plus or minus 3072 squared minus 4ac. Okay, so let me try to show as many steps as possible. So put up here, stand here. Okay, so what are we left with here? We are left with negative 3072 plus or minus the square root of 104,000 divided by negative 502. We're almost done. Xn, because then we have to split it up into x1 and x2. Negative 3072 plus or minus this divided by this. Okay, and if you take turns first adding and then subtracting, we have 5.47 and 6.76. Right, and what you should do, you're provided the diagram, so I'm just going to check close to 5 and close to 6. Let's see if that makes sense. So 5 is here, yeah, they're pretty close together, so that does make sense. Okay, and then we would have to find the respective y's. So we take the 4x minus 18, and we plug in the first x, and this gives us 3.88. So there's our first point. And we plug in second value of x, and this gives us 9.04. And those are our two solutions. Like I said, I checked in Desmos. So let's verify, 5 point, let's see here, 5.47, 3.9, and 6.7, 9.04. Okay, so you can always pause and go back. So I'm not gonna go back. I'll just do another example. And the last example is this one here. Again, we can clearly see that there are two solutions. Let's try to predict. We expect a negative x, positive y, positive x, negative y. Okay, still a hyperbola. Now it's -1 because the hyperbola is a vertical opening. And the only difference is that this needs to be simplified. No big deal. Negative 4x plus 4. Okay, so we're going to negative 4x plus 4. So let's start here. Remember, negative 4x plus 4. Very similar. X plus 3 squared over 20 minus negative 4x. So substitution squared. You can predict, right? This is going to end up as a quadratic function. So now we have 2 here. Let me do it the long way. Okay, so we don't forget. These are binomials. They need to be expanded. You don't have to show this step if you're strong in algebra, but we have x squared plus 6x plus 9. And we have here, what do we have here? Negative 4 is 16 x squared. Negative 16 and negative 16 is negative 32, and 16 and, 4 times 4 is 16. So I'm probably doing it a little bit different than earlier. So all I'm trying to show you, you can simplify the top first and then get rid of the denominators, or I could have gotten rid of the denominators first. Doesn't matter. Okay, so 20 times 40. I will multiply everything by, you could have the lowest common multiple, but if you don't want to bother trying to find it, you can just do the multiple. Okay, it will not be the lowest, but it'll work just fine. Oh, and I see I already forgot all 3 parts. So 800 divided by 20 is 40. $800 divided by 40 is 20. So that's where the switch is. And I'll do this right away so I don't forget. Negative 800. Okay, so they're long problems, that's for sure. Lots of algebra. And the littlest thing in your answer is wrong, right? So be careful with your signs. So what do we have here? We have 40x squared plus 240x plus 360 minus 320x squared plus 640x minus 320 negative 800. Okay, so if we combine like terms, we have 40 minus 320, that's negative 280. 240 and 640 is 880 plus 360 minus 320, that's 40, and then plus 800 because we bring it over, and that's 840. So the first thing we can do is we can divide everything by 10. Okay, so that's what I was trying to show you, not show you, but I told you earlier. To have smaller numbers, we will divide everything by 10. Okay, or we could have also done 20. We could have divided everything by 20. Okay, but I did 10. Okay, so now we have the quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So negative 88 plus or minus 88 squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Almost done. All of this should give you, let's check how to do this part. 88 squared minus 4 times negative 28 times 84, the square root of 17,152. And okay, we're getting closer. Plus or minus 130.97. And then we break it up. We break it up. We do negative 88 plus divided, negative 88 minus, and the two x values are as follows. Okay, I'm almost done. We take the equation. You can take the one that we simplified. We replace x1, and it gives us this. So I don't want to forget, that's my first point. We take x2, and that is the second point. And we did predict a negative with a positive with a negative. Okay, and like I said earlier,